I'm Steve Taylor, and thanks for joining us for this edition of The Age to Come. An ancient timeline is a very important key to understanding the course of history, and it also unlocks details of the future for us. So let's take a closer look today at this very important timeline countdown. The Bible book of Daniel, chapter 2, gives us a foundational outline of a series of 4 great empires that would have dominance on the world scene. The first prominent empire named is Babylon. Daniel chapter 7 provides a parallel outline of these great empires, but it enlarges on the 4th empire and a specific dominant leader who is to emerge in the future. Daniel chapter 8 identifies the 2nd and 3rd empires as Medo-Persia and Greece, and indicates that out of 4 divisions of the Greek Empire will come one destined to achieve worldwide dominance. Daniel chapter 9 begins with the people of Israel dispersed in Babylon under foreign domination as punishment for their disobedience. Their homeland is in foreign hands. Jerusalem, the capital city, is in ruins, and the temple has been destroyed. They have lived in captivity for 70 years, but this time is coming to a close. A plan for the future is about to be revealed. Daniel chapter 9 reveals details about the future of Israel, the city of Jerusalem, and the temple. A timeline of 70 weeks is introduced, of which 6 important things will be accomplished. As it says, 70 weeks have been decreed for your people, Israel, and your holy city, Jerusalem, Daniel 9:24. So the 6 things to be accomplished are, number 1, to finish or to end the transgression of Israel, Daniel 9:24. Romans 11, which quotes from Isaiah 59, says that the deliverer will come from Zion. He will remove ungodliness from Jacob. This is my covenant with them when I take away their sins. Secondly, to make an end of sin in Israel and also in the world. Thirdly, to make atonement for iniquity for the whole world when Christ died. Fourthly, to bring in everlasting righteousness when the kingdom of God is established on earth. Fifthly, to seal up or to bring to a close vision and prophecy. Prophecies will cease according to 1 Corinthians 13:8. And then sixthly, to anoint the most holy place. So during the time period of this ancient timeline, the city of Jerusalem is to be restored to the Jewish people. The temple within Jerusalem is to be rebuilt, and the promised Messiah is to come. And he will fulfill these 6 promises as predicted. And the ancient timeline also foretells the death of the Messiah, followed by mention of a coming worldwide ruler who will commit an abominable act in the rebuilt temple that will begin a time of terrible desolation, which is called the Great Tribulation. But an end will come to these events, and all 6 of the predicted conditions will be fulfilled. The time frame encompassed by the ancient timeline is in excess of 2,500 years, with a gap thus far in the timeline of over 2,000 years between the death of the Messiah and the final outcome for the nation and the people of Israel. The ancient timeline of Daniel 9 is that of 70 weeks, or specifically years. So 70 weeks is in reality 70 times 7, or 490 years. A very important key to this ancient timeline of 490 years is to accurately determine its beginning. So Daniel 9:25 and 26 says that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks, or 483 years. Then after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off. Now, 4 decrees were given to rebuild Jerusalem from its ruins. There was the decree of Cyrus that's recorded in 2 Chronicles 36 and also Ezra 1 and Ezra 6. There is the decree of Darius confirming the decree of Cyrus recorded in Ezra 6. The decree of Artaxerxes recorded in Ezra 7. and the decree of Artaxerxes given to Nehemiah authorizing the rebuilding of Jerusalem, specifically Nehemiah 2, verses 1 to 8. So the key to determining the date is found in Nehemiah 2:1, which refers to the 20th year of King Artaxerxes. Now, historians establish that his reign began in 465 BC, of which the 20th year of his reign would be 445 BC, the year of the decree to rebuild Jerusalem. There would be three main periods during the 490 years, which began in 445 BC. There would be 7 weeks of years, 49 years, 62 weeks of years, 434 years, and 1 week of years, 7 years. That last week of years would be divided into 2 parts of 3.5 years each. The Messiah, according to Daniel 9:26, would be cut off after the 69 weeks, 483 years after the decree to rebuild Jerusalem. And when we consider that the Jewish and Babylonian calendar was set at 360 days for a year, factoring in leap years, we arrive at the year 32 AD, the very year that Jesus the Messiah triumphantly entered Jerusalem and then was crucified the following week. Now, this is one of the most important events of all time, and the timing is precisely as predicted over 400 years before its fulfillment. And the fate of every human hinges on these events. The prophet Isaiah described it this way: He was pierced through for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The Lord has caused the iniquity of us all to fall on him. His grave was assigned with wicked men, yet he was with a rich man in his death, according to Isaiah 53. This Messiah would be the sacrifice to take away the sins of all who would believe in him. Now, going back to the beginning of the ancient timeline, which began its countdown in 445 BC, we note that Jerusalem, it says, will be built again with plaza and moat even in times of distress, Daniel 9:25. Nehemiah was sent by King Artaxerxes to rebuild Jerusalem, and there were those who strongly opposed him and the work of rebuilding the city. Ezra was sent 13 years prior to Nehemiah to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. The ancient timeline indicates that the rebuilding took 49 years. Now, the final 7 years of the ancient timeline is somewhat more challenging to understand. If it continued immediately after the previous 483 years, this would take us to the year 39 AD. But if we look at what is described in Daniel 9, nothing from 32 to 39 AD appears to fulfill what is written. So a more reasonable understanding is that there is a gap between the 69th and 70th week of this ancient timeline. Jesus specifically stated that general signs would occur through the ages, including the proclamation of the gospel of the kingdom of God to all the world. He stated, "Then the end shall come," and immediately he focused on the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, Matthew 24:15. And Jesus is then indicating that this abomination spoken of by Daniel is at the end of the age, as he anticipated, and as also the book of Revelation indicates. Revelation was written some 60 years after the death and resurrection of Jesus, and some 20 years after the destruction of Jerusalem in the year 70 AD. So a coming worldwide ruler will make a 7-year covenant with Daniel's people, the Jewish people, which will be an unholy alliance that will result in ruin for Israel. And in the middle of this 7-year period, the coming world ruler will abruptly break the covenant. He will stop the Jerusalem temple sacrifices and commit a significant event that is called the abomination of desolation. So in light of this, an evident truth is that temple sacrifices cannot be stopped and the temple cannot be desecrated if they don't exist. Revelation 11:1 and 2 and 2 Thessalonians 2:4 reveal that a temple will be rebuilt and a sacrificial system reinstated. And as we read in Daniel 9:26, the prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary. And these simply cannot be destroyed unless they exist. As confirmation that these things will happen, Daniel specifically states 3 different times that regular sacrifice is to be abolished and the abomination of desolation is set up, recorded in Daniel 12 and Daniel 11 and Daniel 9. Approximately 500 years after these things were stated by Daniel, Jesus would state, when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, that then there will be a great tribulation, such as has not occurred since the beginning of the world until now, nor ever will. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened. The sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. Matthew 24:15 and 21, 29, and 30. Jesus clarified that Daniel's prediction of the abolishing of the sacrifices and the abominable event would be events happening immediately before and in connection with his second coming. This abominable event occurring in the rebuilt temple would mark the start of the Great Tribulation, after which the sun would be darkened and Jesus would come. And this 3.5-year Great Tribulation will then precede the return of Jesus. So for the age to come, I'm Steve Taylor, and thanks so much for joining us for today's program.